Stop! Before you waste another dollar on that overpriced RAV4 or CRV, you need to hear this. There are 5 bulletproof SUVs sitting on dealer lots right now that nobody's buying. And honestly, that's the best news for your wallet. These hidden gems cost thousands less, last just as long, and come loaded with features that'll make your neighbor's Honda look like a bad decision. I'm talking about vehicles that mechanics actually recommend that fly under the radar while everyone else fights over the same boring choices. And here's the kicker. Some of these have been beating Toyota and Honda in reliability surveys, but nobody talks about them. Stick around because number 3 will genuinely shock you, and your bank account will thank me later. All right, let's kick this off with a vehicle that's been living in the shadow of its own success story. And honestly, it's criminal how many people walk right past it. The Kia Sportage. Now, I know what you're thinking. Kia? Isn't that the brand my uncle bought because he couldn't afford a real car? Well, buckle up, because that uncle is now laughing all the way to the bank while you're stuck with a car payment that makes your eyes water. Here's the thing about the Sportage that absolutely blows my mind. This SUV comes with a 10-year, 100,000-mile powertrain warranty. Let me say that again for the people in the back. 10 years. You know what Toyota gives you? 3 years. Honda? Same thing. Kia basically looked at the competition and said, "Hold my kimchi." They're so confident this thing won't break down that they're willing to bet a decade on it. That's not just warranty coverage, that's a statement. But let's talk about why dealerships can barely give these away compared to the usual suspects. It's purely a badge problem, and it's the smartest loophole in the car market right now. See, everyone's still living in 2005 when Kia made, let's call them questionable vehicles. But somewhere around 2015, Kia hired the design team from Audi, poached engineers from BMW, and decided to actually build something that didn't fall apart before the first oil change. The result? The Sportage became this absolutely solid piece of machinery that nobody gives credit for. The current generation Sportage is packing a turbocharged engine that puts out legitimate power without drinking fuel like it's going out of style. We're talking about real-world fuel economy that actually matches what the sticker says, which, if you've owned any SUV in the last 5 years, you know is basically a miracle. The transmission is smooth. The ride quality makes you forget you're in a quote-unquote budget brand. And the interior? It's genuinely nicer than vehicles costing 10 grand more. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Consumer Reports, the people who make their entire living testing this stuff, consistently rank the Sportage above average for reliability. J.D. Power has it beating established players in dependability studies. But here's the beautiful part. Because nobody believes it yet, you can walk into a dealership and negotiate like you're buying a used lawnmower. The depreciation curve works entirely in your favor if you're buying used. And if you're buying new, dealers are so eager to move these that you'll get incentives that'd make a Honda salesperson weep. Let's address the elephant in the room, though. The biggest complaint people have. It's not a Toyota. And you know what? Thank goodness it's not, because you're not paying Toyota prices for the same reliability. The Sportage uses a proven engine platform that's been refined over multiple generations. It's got a suspension setup that was tested in conditions ranging from Swedish winters to Arizona summers, and the build quality out of their manufacturing plants is genuinely impressive. We're talking tight panel gaps, solid door closures, none of that cheap rattling you'd expect. And here's a little secret that mechanics won't tell you because they want you buying cars that actually break down. The Sportage is boring to work on because nothing goes wrong. The parts that do need regular maintenance, affordable and available everywhere. You're not hunting down some proprietary Japanese part that costs $300 and takes 2 weeks to ship. The tech package on these is another place where Kia just decided to embarrass the competition. Dual-zone climate control, heated and ventilated seats, a proper infotainment system that actually works without wanting to throw your phone out the window, blind spot monitoring, adaptive cruise control, features that other brands charge you an extra $5 grand for in some premium package come standard or nearly standard on the Sportage. So why is everyone overlooking this absolute gem?
Simple. Badge snobbery and outdated information. While everyone's fighting over the same CR-V at MSRP with zero negotiation room, you could be driving off in a Sportage that's equally reliable, more affordable, better equipped, and backed by a warranty that'll outlive most celebrity marriages. The Sportage isn't just a smart buy, it's probably the smartest buy in the compact SUV segment right now. And the fact that it's overlooked? That's more savings for those of us paying attention.
Now, before we move on, I need to address something that's going to make some of you immediately click away. But hear me out, because this might be the most important 3 minutes of your car buying life. The Hyundai Creta. And yes, I know, you've probably never heard of it, and there's a fascinating reason why. That's actually the whole point. Here's what makes this story absolutely wild. The Creta is the best-selling SUV in India since 2020. It was the top-selling SUV in Russia for 4 consecutive years. It's the third best-selling Hyundai globally. This thing moves over 150,000 units a year in single markets. But if you walk into a Hyundai dealership in North America, the UK, or Australia and ask for a Creta, they'll look at you like you just requested a unicorn with heated seats. Why? Because Hyundai doesn't want you to know about it. See, Hyundai made a calculated decision. They looked at developed markets and said, we can charge more for the Kona, so let's keep the Creta in emerging markets where people actually care about value. It's automotive gatekeeping in its finest. They're literally hiding their most successful compact SUV from the people who could benefit from it most, because profit margins matter more than common sense. But here's where it gets interesting for the smart shopper. You can still get your hands on one if you know where to look, particularly in places like South Africa, Brazil, Indonesia, and several other markets where Hyundai couldn't justify the premium pricing strategy. Let's talk about why this vehicle has dominated markets that actually care about reliability and running costs. The Creta shares its platform with the Venue, which is available in North America, but it's stretched, refined, and loaded with features that would cost you thousands extra on any mainstream competitor. We're talking about a 7-inch touchscreen infotainment system, LED driving lights, 17-inch alloys, leather seating, push-button start, electric folding mirrors, reversing camera, hill start assist, and 6 airbags as standard equipment in most markets. That's not a top trim package, that's baseline equipment. The engine options tell you everything you need to know about Hyundai's confidence in this platform. They offer a naturally aspirated 1.5-liter petrol engine that's been refined over years to be absolutely bulletproof, a turbocharged variant that gives you proper performance without the fragility you'd expect from a stressed engine, and in some markets, a diesel that's so efficient it makes hybrid owners question their life choices. The transmission options include a 6-speed manual for the purists, a CVT that doesn't feel like it's perpetually slipping, and a 7-speed dual clutch that shifts faster than you can say overpriced CR-V. And before you ask, yes, these are the same powertrains Hyundai uses in vehicles they happily sell in premium markets, just packaged in a body they don't think you deserve to buy. Now here's where the Creta becomes genuinely impressive from an engineering standpoint. Hyundai built this thing with ultra-high-strength steel and advanced high-strength steel in the chassis. That's not marketing language, that's actual structural engineering that you'd find in vehicles costing twice as much. The body structure is rigid enough that you don't get those creaks and rattles over rough roads that plague cheaper SUVs. The suspension tuning has been tested everywhere, from Swedish ice to Indian monsoons to Brazilian highways, which means it's been validated in conditions that would make your local test track look like a parking lot. The interior space is where the Creta makes luxury SUVs look embarrassed. 433 liters of luggage space with the seats up, and with the split folding rear seats down, you've got more cargo room than most people will ever actually use. The rear seat legroom is generous enough that adults can sit back there without planning their escape route, and the headroom means you're not asking your passengers to adopt a permanent slouch. It's practical space that actually works for real life, not just impressive numbers on a spec sheet. But let's address the elephant we've been dancing around. The real reason the Creta is overlooked in markets where it actually is available? pure badge snobbery mixed with Hyundai's own marketing strategy. They've positioned the Kona as the premium option for developed markets, and they don't want the Creta cannibalizing those sales. It's the automotive equivalent of fashion brands burning unsold inventory rather than discounting it, because perception matters more than logic. Meanwhile, in markets where the Creta is available, buyers who actually track long-term ownership costs and reliability data are snapping these up because they know exactly what they're getting. A vehicle engineered to the same standards as anything sold in premium markets, just without the artificial markup. And that, right there, is exactly why channels like this exist.
All right, number 3 is where things get controversial, and I can already hear the keyboard warriors warming up their typing tingers. The Subaru Forester. Now, before you comment, but everyone knows about the Forester, let me stop you right there. Because knowing about something and actually buying it are two completely different things. The Forester is the automotive equivalent of that reliable friend who never gets invited to parties because they're not flashy enough. Meanwhile, they're the only one who'll actually help you move apartments at 6 in the morning. Here's the statistical reality that's going to make you question everything. The Forester consistently ranks in the top 5 for safety, top 10 for reliability, and has one of the highest owner retention rates in the entire industry. Translation: people who buy Foresters keep buying Foresters, because once you own one, you realize every other SUV has been lying to you about what actually matters. But walk into any parking lot and count how many you see compared to RAV4s, Rogues, or Escapes. It's not even close. The Forester is the vehicle people should be buying, but aren't, which makes it the perfect definition of overlooked. Let's talk about why this thing is engineered differently than everything else on this list, and why that matters more than most people realize. Subaru uses a boxer engine, which means the pistons move horizontally instead of vertically like every other manufacturer who took the easy route. Why does this matter? Lower center of gravity, better weight distribution, and a level of mechanical balance that makes the Forester handle more like a sporty wagon than a top-heavy SUV. It's physics, not marketing, and you feel it every single time you take a corner. The joke in the automotive world is that Subaru engineers are the only ones who still remember that cars should actually be fun to drive, even if they're practical. But here's where the Forester becomes genuinely special. And this is the part that makes mechanics actually recommend these things. Symmetrical all-wheel drive as standard equipment. Not some fake electronic system that kicks in when you're already stuck. Not some part-time setup that only works when it feels like it, but a proper mechanical all-wheel drive system that's engaged all the time. Every wheel is getting power, every wheel is helping you maintain traction, and when the weather turns nasty or the road gets questionable, you're not praying to the traction control gods, you're just driving. It's the difference between a vehicle with all-wheel drive and an all-wheel drive vehicle. And if you've ever driven both, you know exactly what I mean. The reliability story here is where things get almost boring, which is exactly what you want in a vehicle you're planning to own for a decade. Consumer Reports consistently rates the Forester above average for reliability. J.D. Power gives it high marks for dependability. But more importantly, talk to any Subaru owner with 200,000 miles on the clock, and they'll tell you the same story. Routine maintenance, regular oil changes, and the thing just refuses to die. The boxer engine, when properly maintained, is nearly indestructible. The transmission, whether you get the manual or the CVT, has been refined over so many generations that Subaru has eliminated most of the weak points that plague other manufacturers. Now, let's address why people walk past the Forester despite all this. First, it's not pretty. Let's be honest, it looks like a sensible shoe on wheels. Subaru's design language can best be described as aggressively practical, which is a polite way of saying they prioritized function over trying to win beauty contests. The exterior styling hasn't changed dramatically in years because Subaru knows their buyers care more about visibility, cargo space, and ground clearance than looking cool at the country club. And you know what? That's exactly why it's overlooked. Because we live in a world where people buy vehicles based on how they look in Instagram photos rather than how they perform over 10 years of ownership. The interior space is another area where the Forester just quietly dominates without making a big deal about it.
The cargo area is massive, genuinely usable, and designed by people who apparently understand that humans need to fit actual objects back there, not just grocery bags carefully arranged for promotional photos. The rear seat room is generous enough that car seats install without requiring an engineering degree, and adults can sit back there without documenting their suffering on social media. The visibility is phenomenal because Subaru didn't sacrifice window size for some aggressive roofline that makes you feel like you're driving a bunker. You can actually see out of this thing, which apparently makes it radical in modern automotive design. The safety features on the Forester are where Subaru basically decided to embarrass everyone else in the segment. EyeSight, their driver's assistance system, comes standard on most trims and includes adaptive cruise control, pre-collision braking, lane departure warning, and lane keep assist that actually works instead of ping-ponging you between lane markers like you're in a video game. The Institute for Highway Safety gives the Forester their top safety awards so consistently that it's basically expected at this point. When safety organizations run out of nice things to say about your crash test results, you're doing something right. But here's the real reason the Forester belongs on this list, and it's something that only becomes apparent after you've owned one for a few years. This vehicle has been engineered for longevity in a market that's designed around planned obsolescence. Subaru builds these things in a way that prioritizes long-term durability over short-term cost savings, which means you're paying slightly more upfront for a vehicle that won't nickel and dime you into bankruptcy over the ownership period. The parts are reasonably priced, the maintenance schedule is straightforward, and independent mechanics actually enjoy working on them because the engineering makes sense. So why is the Forester overlooked? Because it's competent without being sexy, reliable without being exciting, and practical without being trendy. It's the vehicle your financially responsible friend drives while everyone else is underwater on their car payment. And in a world obsessed with image over substance, that makes it practically invisible. But for those of us who care about value, safety, and actually keeping money in our bank accounts, the Forester isn't just overlooked, it's exactly what we're looking for.
Number 4 is going to make luxury brand owners genuinely uncomfortable, and that's exactly why we need to talk about it. The Mazda CX-5. This is the SUV that's been quietly embarrassing vehicles costing $20,000 more, and somehow it's still flying under the radar while people line up to overpay for German badges and Japanese mainstream names. If the automotive industry had a best-kept secret, this would be it, except the secret's been hiding in plain sight for over a decade. Here's what's absolutely mind-blowing about the CX-5 situation. Mazda took everything they learned from luxury brands, hired designers who understood that elegance doesn't require chrome overload, and then decided to sell the result at a price point that makes premium SUV buyers look like they failed basic math. The interior materials in a CX-5 are genuinely nicer than what you'll find in entry-level BMWs and Audis. We're talking soft-touch surfaces where it matters, real stitching that isn't just painted-on fakery, and a fit and finish that makes you wonder why anyone's paying luxury prices for plastic dashboards with a fancy logo. Mazda calls it Jinba Itai, which translates to horse and rider as one, but really it means they actually care about the driving experience instead of just slapping leather on everything and calling it premium. The driving dynamics are where the CX-5 becomes genuinely special, and this is what separates it from every other SUV in this segment. Mazda refused to build just another appliance on wheels. They tuned the suspension with actual feedback, weighted the steering so it communicates what the front wheels are doing, and calibrated the throttle response so it feels connected rather than filtered through 3 computers in a prayer. It's the difference between driving a vehicle and operating one, and once you experience it, every other mainstream SUV feels numb and disconnected. The joke among automotive journalists is that the CX-5 drives like Mazda forgot they were building an SUV and accidentally made a sporty wagon that got inflated to crossover height. Now let's talk about the Skyactiv technology, because this is where Mazda did something genuinely innovative while everyone else was chasing hybrid complexity. Skyactiv isn't a marketing term. It's a complete rethinking of how internal combustion engines should work. Higher compression ratios, lighter weight components, optimized fuel injection, and transmission programming that actually makes sense. The result?
real-world fuel economy that matches or beats the EPA estimates, which if you've owned any modern vehicle, you know is basically sorcery. The engine delivers power smoothly across the rev range, without that laggy turbo behavior that plagues competitors, and the transmission shifts so seamlessly you forget it's there. It's engineering that prioritizes the actual driving experience over spec sheet bragging rights. The reliability data tells a story that mainstream media loves to ignore because it doesn't fit the narrative. Consumer Reports consistently ranks the CX-5 as one of the most reliable compact SUVs you can buy. It regularly outperforms Honda and Toyota in long-term dependability studies, which should be front-page news, but somehow gets buried because people can't accept that Mazda has been building bulletproof vehicles for years. The engine and transmission combination has been refined over multiple generations, which means Mazda has had time to identify and eliminate weak points that plague first-generation designs from other manufacturers. When you find a CX-5 with 150,000 miles that still drives like new, that's not luck, that's intentional engineering. But here's where things get really interesting from a value perspective. The CX-5 depreciates slower than almost anything in its class, which means you're not just buying a great vehicle, you're making a smart financial decision. When Honda CR-Vs and Toyota RAV4s are selling at or above MSRP with zero negotiation because everyone's convinced they're the only reliable options, the CX-5 sits on the lot with actual discounts and incentives. Dealers want to move these things because most buyers have been programmed to believe that only Honda and Toyota make reliable vehicles, which creates an arbitrage opportunity for anyone who's done 5 minutes of actual research. You're getting comparable or better reliability, superior driving dynamics, nicer interior quality, and you're paying less for the privilege. It's the automotive equivalent of finding designer clothes at outlet prices while everyone else fights over full retail basics. The cargo space and practicality equation is where Mazda made intelligent compromises. The CX-5 isn't trying to be the biggest SUV in the segment because Mazda understood that most people don't need to haul lumber and furniture every weekend. What you get is usable cargo space that works for real life, rear seats that fold flat when you need more room, and intelligent storage solutions that suggest someone actually thought about how humans use vehicles. The ground clearance is sufficient for actual use without being so excessive that shorter people need a ladder and a prayer. And the overall dimensions mean you can park this thing in normal spaces without requiring a spotter and a prayer. The safety story here deserves special attention because Mazda didn't just check boxes, they engineered the CX-5 to actually protect occupants. Top safety pick ratings from the Institute for Highway Safety aren't occasional achievements, they're expected standards that Mazda meets year after year. The iActive Sense suite of driver assistance features includes everything you'd expect in a modern vehicle, but it's calibrated to be helpful rather than intrusive. The automatic emergency braking doesn't slam on the brakes every time a leaf blows across the road. The lane departure system doesn't fight you like you're wrestling for control, and the blind spot monitoring actually works consistently. It's safety technology that feels like it was programmed by people who actually drive cars rather than engineers who only see data. So why is the CX-5 overlooked despite being objectively better than most of its competition? Brand perception and marketing budgets. Mazda doesn't have the advertising spend of Toyota or Honda, doesn't have the luxury cachet of German brands, and doesn't have the cult following that Subaru has cultivated. What they have is a vehicle that's genuinely excellent on every metric that matters for actual ownership, sold by a company that focused their resources on engineering rather than marketing. For buyers who care about driving quality, build materials, reliability data, and actual value, the CX-5 isn't just competitive, it's the obvious choice. The fact that most people miss it, that's their loss and your gain.
All right, number 5 is going to break some brains, and I can already feel the confusion radiating through the screen. The Toyota RAV4. Yes, the same RAV4 I told you to stop overpaying for in the introduction. Now you're thinking I've lost the plot, but stick with me because this is where we separate the smart buyers from the people who just follow the herd off a financial cliff. The RAV4 isn't overlooked because nobody knows about it, it's overlooked because everyone's buying it completely wrong. Here's the absolute insanity of the RAV4 market right now. Walk into any Toyota dealership and you'll find people paying $5,000 to $10,000 over MSRP, waiting months for delivery, and accepting whatever trim and color the dealer decides to bless them with, all because they've been convinced this is the only reliable SUV that exists. It's mass hysteria with a financing agreement attached. Meanwhile, the used RAV4 market is absolutely flooded with low-mileage examples from people who realize they overpaid for something they didn't actually need. And that's where the smart money makes its move. The RAV4 isn't overlooked. The value proposition in the used market is what everyone's missing. Let's establish why the RAV4 became the default choice for anyone who Googled reliable SUV exactly once. Toyota's reputation for reliability isn't marketing fluff, it's backed by decades of data showing these things refuse to die even when neglected. The RAV4 specifically has been refined over multiple generations to the point where the engineering is proven, the weak points have been identified and corrected, and the result is a vehicle that's genuinely dependable. We're talking about SUVs with 200,000 miles that still run like they're annoyed you doubted them. The powertrain is conservative, which in automotive terms means Toyota prioritized longevity over chasing horsepower numbers that look good in advertisements. The hybrid system, when properly maintained, is one of the most bulletproof electrified setups in the industry because Toyota's been perfecting it for over 2 decades. The battery longevity is excellent, the regenerative braking system actually works efficiently, and the seamless transition between gas and electric power means you forget you're driving a hybrid until you notice how rarely you're stopping for fuel. It's electrification done right, without the range anxiety or charging infrastructure drama that plagues pure electric options. Now, here's the controversial part that's going to make some people defensive. The RAV4 isn't actually better than the other vehicles on this list. It's not more reliable than the Mazda, not better engineered than the Subaru, not more feature-packed than the Kia, and it's definitely not more unique than the Creta. What it is proven and available everywhere, which creates peace of mind that has genuine value. When you're in the middle of nowhere and something breaks, finding a Toyota mechanic and parts is easy. The resale value holds because everyone believes in the Toyota myth, which means you're not just buying reliability, you're buying marketability when it's time to sell. That has real financial value, even if it's not fair to the other excellent options we've discussed. So why is the RAV4 on this list if it's the most popular SUV in the segment? Because 90% of buyers are approaching it completely wrong. They're paying new car prices in a seller's market, accepting dealer markups without negotiation, and ignoring the used market where the real value exists. The smart play with the RAV4 is buying a certified pre-owned example that's 2 to 3 years old, letting someone else absorb the depreciation and dealer markup, and getting into proven reliability at a price that actually makes sense. You get the same legendary Toyota dependability, the same parts availability, the same resale value proposition, but you're not paying the stupid tax that comes with buying new in an inflated market. The overlooked angle here is strategic timing and market awareness. When everyone's fighting over new inventory and paying whatever dealers demand, the used market creates opportunities for buyers who understand that a 3-year-old RAV4 is functionally identical to a new one, just significantly cheaper. Toyota builds these things to last decades, which means buying used isn't accepting someone else's problem, it's taking advantage of artificial market conditions that don't reflect the vehicle's actual durability. It's the same reliable SUV, just purchased by someone who understands value.
So there you have it. 5 genuinely excellent SUVs that are overlooked for 5 completely different reasons. The Sportage because of badge snobbery, the Creta because manufacturers don't want you to have it, the Forester because it's too practical to be cool, the CX-5 because Mazda focused on engineering instead of marketing budgets, and the RAV4 because everyone's buying it wrong and ignoring where the real value exists. The common thread? Every single one of these vehicles will get you where you need to go reliably, affordably, and without the financial regret that comes with following the herd. If this video saved you from making an expensive mistake, hit that subscribe button because we're going to keep bringing you the information the automotive industry doesn't want you to know. Drop a comment telling me which one you're considering or if I missed an overlooked gem that deserves attention. And if you found this valuable, share it with someone about to overpay for their next SUV. Their bank account will thank you. Now get out there and make a smart decision instead of an expensive one.